In today's Locked On Pelicans, I'll tell you why the loss to Boston showed you a glimpse of what New Orleans thought they'd be this season. But before we even get to that part, should CJ McCollum have taken that final shot? And yeah, we got to talk about Zion's suspension as well. It's the Monday episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans at NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this Monday, we are tipping off a week's worth of shows. We would normally talk about two games here, but we're going to really focus on the loss to the Boston Celtics 120-119, why it gives you a glimpse of what you thought New Orleans would be this season, who should have taken that final shot in the first place, and then, we're going to talk about Zion's suspension over talking about the actual game that they won on Friday because it overshadows everything. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube and become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans. Don't forget about the free daily Locked On Pelicans newsletter. So let's get into the loss to the Boston Celtics, 120-119. You saw a glimpse of what New Orleans thought they would be this season. Now, it didn't end up working out in the end. There was some weirdness to it at the very end, too. Those refs were awful in this game. But they easily could have won. And when you looked at that final shot, 6.6 seconds left. CJ McCollum inbounding the ball to Dejounte Murray. Murray getting it right back to CJ. And then CJ driving for a layup floater off the glass millimeters away. If you look at that top-down view of the shot, and you need to search that out if you haven't seen it, this is about as close of a make, a miss, whatever you want to call it, that you will ever find. That was about as close to a game winner, literally like a millimeter difference, and that ball goes in. That's a good shot at the end. I'm going to say this right now. Yes, that's a good shot from CJ McCollum right at the end. Hold on. I know what you're going to say. Get it to Zion, something like that. We're going to talk about that in a second here. CJ's made that shot thousands, hundreds of thousands of times in his life over his, playing career from, whenever he started to now. That's his kind of money shot. And you saw him beat one. He juked out Drew Holiday to get a step on him, which was really good. Had the right look. And again, it wasn't like it was a bad miss or anything like that. It was about as close as you can get. You couldn't ask for a better look unless it just went in. That's a good dig. If he makes this, we are singing his praises. And the opening of the show is entirely different based on the 38 points that he had on Friday in the win over the Philadelphia 76ers. He's been playing some really good basketball. Does he not show up in certain games? Yes. Did he shoot particularly well in this one? No. But you get the best shot that you can get. And if you looked before that, Zion was doubled. And, knowing the Boston Celtics and Joe Mazzulla, I don't think there was going to really be a world where they let Zion Williamson get the ball inbounded. So just to get him the ball, you need to find a way to run some action, do it, but that kills some time. You only have 6.6 seconds. There wasn't a timeout. You've got to go all 94 feet, the full length of the court. Putting it in a guard's hand makes a lot of sense. The other thing to keep in mind with that too is Zion's handle at times is not great. When he's got to move extra fast just to get the ball up and go, there is a bit of a worry that he could lose the ball. CJ is a better pure ball handler in that regard. So I think that goes into this too. If they had a timeout and they could inbound it from a sideline out of bounds when you advance the ball, I think they would have gotten the ball to Zion Williamson. But given that that wasn't the situation, that's where I think you go like, okay, yeah, get it to CJ, just kind of let him do his thing. And look, he got the shot. It's process over results, right? That's process over results. That was the good look. There maybe was some way they could find a way to get the ball to Zion, but look, any sort of pass introduces other variables, and against a very good team like the Boston Celtics with a very good defense, you don't want to risk passes getting intercepted or leading to a turnover or things like that. Here, yeah, maybe an isolation play is actually the best thing to go because it minimizes potential variables and risks and turnovers and things like that that could come into play with it. And if you want to nitpick stuff, look, I did not like the three that Zion took when the score was 118-115, 58 seconds to go, 13 seconds left on the shot clock, and he takes a step back three. Look, we want him to shoot a little bit of threes. He took a mid-range jumper earlier in the game and made it. I just don't think that that's the time and the place to take that shot. I don't hate it a ton, but if you want to nitpick like shots at the end of the game, I think that one that he took was not great. He had some space, yeah, but it's on a step back, which increases the difficulty of that shot. Didn't have a ton of space, but had some. And look, him taking it that early with 58 seconds left to go, 13 seconds left on the shot clock, basically meant the Pelicans would get 2 possessions after. Sure. But even if you use 13 more seconds to generate a better shot attempt, you're still in position to go 2 for 1. That puts you about 45 seconds. That's a 2 for 1 opportunity when you count that possession. You'll still get one more shot. So if you make a 2 and you're down 1 at that point, Boston goes down and makes a shot. You're down 3, let's say. You at least can then have enough time to drop a 3-pointer to try and tie it and send it to overtime. And look, the way it all played out in the end, we can nitpick this to death. New Orleans was in position to win it due to some weirdness from the refs and a 5-second call that was the right call. But really, if you want to kind of assign blame here, it wasn't the final shot. It's what leads up to that. The Pelicans did not play particularly well in the fourth quarter. Just 19 points. The offense down the stretch was also not particularly great either. And so if that's going to be the case, it's not the final possession. It's the final 5 minutes or so, something that has been a problem for New Orleans, throughout this time. And if it wasn't for the refs being a little bit odd, well then, yeah, maybe it would have been, not even this close. And so New Orleans shot 30% over the final 5 minutes of the game, right? That's what happened there. That's where it went bad. Trey Murphy going 0 for 2 from 3 in those situations, and he played great in this game. We'll talk more about him and some of the others who played well in the next segment here. It was just missing some shots. Sometimes that's just how it goes, unfortunately, when it comes down to all of this. Make or miss league. Trey was great, and he missed 2 threes that would have been a real good spot for New Orleans had they made that. So that's just sometimes how it goes. Also worth mentioning on the final CJ possession, go rewatch it. You can go to nba.com/stats, click on the box score, and you can click on the final shot to be able to see it. Completely free. Zion is kind of a trail man. So CJ drives on the right side of the paint, gets that shot up. Zion's in a really, really good position for an offensive rebound and just a put-back dunk. Put it back in. That ball bounces slightly differently. Look at it. Zion's in position to get that and just put it back in. That's part of the play design too, was knowing that they weren't going to let Zion get the ball, so use him as kind of an offensive rebounding finisher there. I don't hate the shot attempt at all. I thought it was pretty good. Sometimes you just miss shots, and that's how it goes. And it's unfortunate when you play your best game in a really, really long time against a really good team, and it would have been a really fun win. But ultimately, I do think that is a good look, and New Orleans should feel very happy about how they played in this game. So, how did it all work? How'd they play so well? You saw a glimpse of what New Orleans thought they'd be this season in this game. We'll look at the performances from Trey Murphy, from Zion Williamson, from Dejounte Murray, and others coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. I have some stats from the starters that you do not want to miss. You're going to feel even more impressed with it coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by the ultimate college basketball head coach, HC here. I want to take a moment to introduce you to the game that's keeping me up at night, the brand new mobile game that I'm really excited about, Ultimate College Basketball Head Coach. If you ever dreamed of being a college basketball head coach, this is your chance to step into those shoes. In Ultimate College Basketball HC, you can control every detail of your program, from recruiting players and hiring coaching staff to overseeing training camps, handing out NIL deals, and managing scholarships. It's all in your hands. And when it comes to the game, you get to drop offensive plays, set your strategy, go prove your basketball basketball acumen, your chops right there. The plays you call won't just affect the current season, it's going to shape the future of your school's basketball program. And this game lets you feel the full weight of what it means to be a head coach and lead your team to glory. So right now, here's a special offer for Locked On Pelicans listeners. Use promo code LOCKEDONCBB, all caps, LOCKEDONCBB, inside the game store to get a free boost for your program. It's the perfect way to kickstart your coaching career. To download Ultimate College Basketball HC, just visit ultimate-cbb.com or look it up in the app stores. Ultimate College Basketball HC, begin your coaching legacy today. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is also brought to you by Game Time. This is my go-to ticketing app because of all of the features that they have. And I don't just use it for sporting events, comedy, theater, music, whatever it might be. You can make the day more memorable by being at the live event. Now Game Time has made it even easier for you to get tickets to your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I recommend it for all my friends who want to go to Pelicans games. You can get some great deals there right now. If you're going to a venue you've never been before, if I'm going with somebody too, I make sure they use Game Time because you get the panoramic view from your seat before you buy. So we're getting the exact tickets that we want. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans. And don't forget about the free daily newsletter. And you can subscribe over at LockedOnDaily.com. Super simple. LockedOnDaily.com to subscribe today. Okay, so let's get into this game. The 120-119 loss to the Boston Celtics. About as good of a game as New Orleans has played. And I've got some stats for you. One of the things that I'd said we'd wanted to see was, and I talked about this on the show the other day, I've been hammering this point home, is plan for the future. Look, try and win a game if you can. Don't get me wrong, but plan for the future. And that includes a starting lineup pretty much like the one we saw. Dejounte Murray, CJ McCollum, Trey Murphy, Zion Williamson, Yves Missi. We've said we wanted to see this lineup starting. Now you can put Herb Jones in there for CJ too, depending on the injury status. He's out indefinitely right now. But this is like a future lineup in theory, depending on what you do with CJ McCollum. But look, you have two shooters in Trey Murphy and CJ. Your center that is you're going to play a center next to Zion Williamson, it seems like. Cool. You got Zion in there too. And then Dejounte Murray to be your point guard, but who can also shoot the ball. And by the way, this starting lineup kicked butt in this game. I have the stats from just this lineup here that I want to share with you. Dejounte Murray, Trey Murphy, Zion Williamson, CJ McCollum, Yves Missi. I don't know why it's sorted that way. In 13 minutes and 33 seconds, their plus minus was a +7. So that starting lineup outscored the Celtics starting lineup. There might be a little bit of variables in there by about 7 points in 13 minutes. That's really, really good. That's a real good number in just 13 minutes. The Boston starting lineup played 22 minutes and 16 seconds together. So longer than the Pelicans starters, so they were going against the bench unit a little bit more. They were a +1. One of the best teams in the league is obviously the Boston Celtics, right? We know this. They are good. And the Pelicans outplayed their starters. Absolutely outplayed their starters. You know how impressive that is? And how hard that is to do. So let's get into their net rating. That's your offensive rating minus your defensive rating for those who aren't familiar with that number. And anything, you want that to be as high as possible. Your offensive rating is how many points you score per 100 possessions. Your defensive rating is how many points you allow per 100 possessions here. The Pelicans this season, I'm just going to go down to the bottom here, have an offensive rating of 108.3 and a defensive rating of 117.7. It's a negative 9.4 net rating. The offensive rating for that starting unit in 13 minutes and 33 seconds, it's a small sample size, but it's what we have, had a net rating of 128.6, or had an offensive rating of 128.6. The Cleveland Cavaliers have the best offensive rating in the league this year. It's 121.2. This was 128.6. About 7 more than 7 more. That's really 7.4. That's an incredible number. Their defensive rating, remember, their defensive rating this season is 117.7. The defensive rating for them in this game was 103.6 on that side of the ball with those starters. The Thunder have the best defensive rating this season at 102.9, so it wouldn't beat that. But it'd be second. The Magic have the second best defensive rating at 106.7. This was 103.6. About 3 less than the Orlando Magic. It's a very small sample size. There was some weirdness with the refs involved and things like that. But you just saw the New Orleans Pelicans beat out the Boston Celtics starting lineup that is Drew Holiday, Derek White, Porzingis, Tatum, and Brown. That is a real good group who just won a title, like running away with the league last year, or one of the favorites to win this year. And they outplayed them. Not one single Boston starter had a positive net rating on the night. Drew Holiday -1, Derek White -1, Kristaps Porzingis -8, Tatum -9. Jaylen Brown was the lone non-negative person at 0. For the Pelicans, Dejounte Murray +7, CJ +11. By far by the way, the best on the team in this game. If you want to talk more about the final shot, Messi +7, Zion +4. Trey was the only one at -4. But the starters won their minutes. You see the Zion Williamson effect here. It's just that simple. Trey, 5 of 10 from 3. 30 points on the night. He was awesome. He had space. Could attack closeouts. Hey, they weren't throwing 2 people at him knowing that, okay, if he doesn't shoot, we'll just funnel him into the teeth of our defense and a rim protector there. Couldn't do that with Zion Williamson out there on the court. 10 of 17 from the field overall. That's almost 60%. 4 assists. You had Messi score 7 points in this one. CJ, 5 of 15, not great. 1 of 6 from 3, not good, but 13 points as well. You had Dejounte Murray maybe have his best game as a Pelican. 26 points, 9 rebounds, 8 assists. He was 6 of 9 from 3. One of the things you saw him struggle with all season long is those 3-point attempts because he's doing more more pull-up threes than he has been in the past. But now that Zion's back and he's now shooting the ball particularly better over these past 2 games with Zion, 3 games overall, this is someone who all of a sudden now doesn't need to create for himself and can simply just catch and shoot threes, though he still had a couple of pull-up threes that he made because he was feeling it in this one. But overall, Dejounte Murray was looking really good because Zion makes his life easier. Now, there's a larger question to ask of, he's your point guard. Does he need Zion to make his life easier? Should he look that much different with Zion? But I mean, that's just kind of the effect here when it comes to that sort of thing. His 3-pointers now look significantly better than they were before. That's a really encouraging sign. If you actually look at his numbers this year in terms of percentage of 3-point field goals that are assisted by others, it is the lowest it's ever been by far, which means he's taking fewer catch and shoot threes and more pull-up jumpers where there's no assist on the play. And that's not great. Don't do that. Just be a catch and shoot guy. And he can do that now because Zion Williamson is out there. Now, Zion had a bit of a quiet game in terms of scoring. He was 5 of 15 for 16 points. Got to the line, though. 7 rebounds, 3 assists. He was incredible on defense. 5 steals. He had 3 straight, I think it was, leading to points for New Orleans. They were playing really well. The team barely turned the ball over just 9 times on the night. Overall, they did everything you could want against the deepest team by far in the league. Peyton Pritchard for the Boston Celtics is going to win 6th Man of the Year. Al Horford comes off the bench. Luke Cornett can score 8 off the bench. Easy. They're good here. The one complaint that I think you could have made here was you needed to play your starters some more minutes. Zion only got 28 minutes of action. He's clearly on some sort of minutes restriction, but the Brandon Boston minutes, Jose Alvarado minutes, Jordan Hawkins minutes were not particularly great in my opinion, and maybe they should have shortened the rotation to just try and go and get this win. But overall, It was just a really good performance from a team that knew what they needed to do. They were shooting the three ball. They were making it, which I thought was particularly great too here in this game. They were 17 for 37. I'd said 36, 37, 38 is probably the magic number of threes that they can take. 40 might be a little bit much, but 37, 38 is realistic. They did that in this game. We talked about that last week for the everydayers. 46% from three, 45.9% we're rounding up. It was a great performance. You got a glimpse of what they thought they could be. This team, when healthy, had talent to be good. Was it going to be perfect? No. Were you going to go through stretches in the fourth quarter where they struggled to close games? Maybe due to coaching, just maybe due to unclutch, whatever it might be. Yes, we kind of saw that last year, and that kind of showed up in this game again, that talent will get you pretty freaking far, but doesn't necessarily just get you over the hump to a win by itself. You can improve upon that, though. But the starters looking that good against Boston starters, be excited about that if you keep Zion Williamson. But he was suspended on Friday. So as good as he can make you look, is he really the guy to lead the team going forward? Let's talk about that suspension. Coming a little bit late to this since it happened on Friday. This is now the Monday show, Sunday night. But I want to talk about that because it does raise some bigger questions here. And just is and it's also what makes this all so frustrating, right? You get this game where he's kind of the engine and key to making things work and unlocking everybody else. And then you had to suspend him just a game ago, basically due to immaturity. Let's talk about it. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by OpenPhone. Running a small business means you're wearing a lot of hats. Your personal phone becomes your business phone, and before you know it, you're juggling customer calls all day and night. As your team grows, it becomes impossible to manage everything with just your personal number. So that's where OpenPhone comes in. It's the #1 business phone system designed to help you keep your work and personal life separate. For just $15 a month, that's only like a few coffees, you get complete transparency and visibility into everything happening with your business phone number. OpenPhone works through an app on your phone or computer and integrates with tools like HubSpot and hundreds of others. It also uses AI-powered call transcripts and summaries, so you'll have a rundown of your calls and action items the second you hang up. And if you miss a call, no problem. Automated messages are sent directly to your customer, ensuring you never miss an opportunity to engage. So right now, OpenPhone is offering 20% off your first 6 months. 6 months. When you go to openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's openphone.com/LockedOnNBA for 20% off 6 months. Openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And for your second listen, Locked On Saints, Ross Jackson, making sense of everything black and gold here when it comes to the coaching search. We're going to hear from Mickey Loomis finally on Monday as well. He'll be recapping that. He'll be there also. I'm excited to hear how that goes. Will there be any gum smacking or anything like that? Make Locked On Saints your second listen today. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, let's start to wrap up the show, and we're not going to talk about the game on Friday, which is annoying. I would like to talk about that game because the team played really well. CJ McCollum continued to look really good this season as they beat the Philadelphia 76ers 123-115, and we're kind of running away with this game for a little while. CJ, 38 points, outscoring Tyrese Maxey, outscoring Paul George, and looking phenomenal in that game. He was 6 of 11 from 3, 13 of 24 overall. Those are really good numbers. Dejounte Murray with 17 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists. Overall, it was a really good performance for a team missing Brandon Ingram, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, and Zion Williamson, because Zion Williamson was suspended for this game. It was my first reaction to seeing that. This was a 1-game suspension, they said, because he was late for the team playing. Whether that meant he missed it completely or just held it up, whatever, we don't have some of the details here. But what are we doing here? There's a lot of reasons to be concerned about this. There's also a number of reasons to not be worried about it either. Look, clearly he can play well. You can suspend him. He came back and he played, and it all looked like water under the bridge. Everyone was being professional, and they just moved on, as they freaking should. But here's the thing. We're not talking about a really good win for New Orleans, a year where they don't have that many, and it's really fun to talk about winning basketball. You have 8, second worst in the league. And we don't even talk about it because it's overshadowed by this conversation, which absolutely sucks. And look, don't come to me and be like, well, you don't have to talk about it. I do have to talk about it. And I'm annoyed by it. This shouldn't be a thing. This shouldn't be a conversation around the team. It shouldn't overshadow things. In a year where the tensions are heightened because of all the losing and all the injuries and that stuff, you don't need this. And I think it's also worth mentioning that Willie Green, in his pregame press conference, said this was the culmination of a number of things. You heard that reported by other people around the league as well, repeatedly being late to practices and other things like that. And so you have a game against the Boston Celtics where the team looks real good, the starters click, and it gives you hope for the future. It does. There's very little hope to find right now when it comes to this team for the future. And actually having that hope's an important thing. And you don't really have it. And you get a win like this, that could be one of those type of moments. And then you go, but like, wait, does it matter if Zion's still unprofessional? And that's my question about it here. Is it ever going to click? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Maybe you think it's definitely a no. That's fine. It shouldn't be this at this point in time. Like, look, good on the team for suspending Zion and taking a bit of a stand here. I don't think it is that big of a deal in the long run. I definitely think they should have done it. I've even reported on here in other places that Zion, would be late, would fall asleep during some film study and film review that they do as well. He just hasn't been the professional that you want him to be. And every time we think he's turning a corner, you have a moment like this that's, one step forward and then 2 steps back. For Zion, for the team, it was the right thing to do. Take a stand here and be like, enough. Find him some money. He'll respond to that. He came back from injury, looked really good. You can see he was doing the work, and he even said it in his statement. His statement, quote, "I take full responsibility for the suspension. I have worked extremely hard in rehab to get healthy and deliver for this team." Right? I've worked extremely hard in rehab to get healthy and deliver for this team. I think we saw that. You could see it. He don't look like a dude who hasn't played basketball in 2 months. But every step forward, it feels like it's being followed by at least one step, if not multiple steps backwards. And that is what this is. Multiple times this year, just been late, not doing the thing. It also leads to bigger questions of, has him not taking stuff seriously led to some of these injuries? People want to yell at the medical staff and things like that. How much of this is on Zion, not just for the weight, but the rehab? If you're missing some practice time and stuff like that, does that impact your conditioning on the court? Could that lead to a hamstring injury? Those type of questions are all valid right now. And we don't want to have those. It's exhausting to talk about this. Now, again, could mean nothing, could mean something. Look, this is also, could be, I don't think it is, but could be the first step of a team kind of using a PR campaign to just move on from him, right? Like, yeah, we suspended Zion because he's been late a bunch. And we don't want to deal with this anymore, so we're going to trade him. And no one's going to blame them for that sort of thing, right? Be like, yeah, just, he's the unprofessional, can't do it. Like, even if you believe in Zion Williamson, you might just be like, yeah, no, it's not working. We can't keep doing this. I also think them taking the stand, first time that we are publicly aware, let's say, of anything like this, it could have been fine behind the scenes, things like that. If you're going to do this, this hurts his trade value, right? Like, this only lowers it. So overall, I don't see this as a thing of them moving on from him because you just harm that trade value. If something like this happened, you're like, we want to trade him, that value's got to be as high as possible. You don't do this because other teams then don't know about it, and that doesn't lower the trade value. So I think that's also worth keeping in mind too, that, this also could be that, yeah, we plan on building around him and we need to put some boundaries in place and make sure the discipline is there because this is our franchise player going forward and we need to keep doing it. But I think it was good for the team, and something we've said many times before, and I'm going to say now, we hope it's a wake-up call for Zion that, like, you shouldn't be doing this. Look, this is a season where, like, you needed to get things right, and to show up late multiple times and all of that from what's being reported isn't good. right? It just shows like, do you not get it? You know, have you ever had a moment where you were in trouble? Maybe you're at work, like you put on a pip or something like that. It's like, you got to be on your best behavior. You got to nail everything to get off of that and be fine going forward. And then you see those people who just like, don't do it, you know, whatever. Or maybe it's like, you realize like, hey man, like if you stop doing whatever, your girlfriend's going to break up with you, you know, whatever it might be. And then they're like, you know, I'm just going to keep being me. And it's like, yeah. And then you get dumped and you're like, what the heck did you think was going to happen here? Like there's moments when you've just got to be on your best behavior and do the right thing. And for Zion to know that that's what was going on here and just not do it, I think is incredibly, incredibly disappointing and shouldn't be how this is all going. We'll see. He looked good tonight. The starters look good tonight. Sometimes that's all that matters too. Let me know what you think of the suspension in the comments down below, what you thought about this Boston game and who you thought should have taken the final shot. A whole bunch of questions for you. So that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. Probably some more trade talk tomorrow as we are getting even closer to the trade deadline. There's some updates you got to know about. That's coming up here in tomorrow's episode of Locked On Pelicans. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NolaJake on Twitter. And I'll be back with y'all tomorrow. This is the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.